Just checking out what's in. Thank you, Ben. Mr. Peeler, in his gracious introduction, left out a few things. He omitted to mention that the speaker for today's high school event never went to high school. He omitted to mention that this spokesperson for today's graduation never graduated from anything in his life, with the exception of graduating from the School of Hard Knocks. He never mentioned that despite the fact that the presentation was to be delivered in English, the speaker never had even 1 hour of formal English instruction, except of what he had learned while working for the American Army. Ain't you, can't you, don't you, want you. And that, on top of it, he had not been able to get rid of his accent. And now, to the serious subjects. Reverend Lane Davis, Rabbi Joseph Press, Principal Dr. Lisa Stoev, I hope I pronounce it correctly, Mrs. N. Popinski, esteemed faculty of the North Springs High School, proud parents of the senior class, graduating students of the class of 2013, dear friends. I'm greatly moved to have been asked to address this graduating class of 2013 of the North Springs High School, to speak from the podium that my hero, Congressman John Lewis, had addressed the last year's graduation. It is an honor that I should always cherish. How exciting to face this group of happy and yet anticipatory and full of suspense young people on the threshold of one more step to maturity. Some can't wait to make the exhilarating first step of independence, while some battle the anxiety of the challenge. The air is charged with hopes and aspirations of journeys to be traveled in the physical company of trusted friends. Some of the journeys may not always end at the same target that we aim at. But after all, it is the journey that is always more exhilarating than the arrival. So before I get into the gist of my presentation, permit me to introduce you to some of my friends and colleagues, the co-travelers of my voyage of life, and I will tell you the reason why later. I met Adolf Haas, one of the few survivors of the death camp of Auschwitz, where over 1 million people have perished. I met him while trying to gain entry into the university at Marburg, Germany. He struck me as a quick-witted, animated, and opinionated devil's advocate. No matter what side you took in a discussion, Mr. Haas had an opposite point of view. I thought that he was a bit out of the ordinary. He ended up as Professor Adolf Haas, teaching psychiatry at Michigan State University. Is it odd? Eugene Rosenblum, who survived the war in the forest with the partisans, sadly the only member of his family that survived, earned the nickname of absent-minded professor before he earned his doctorate in pharmacology. If you saw him walking with one foot in the gutter and the other on the sidewalks and brought it to his attention, he would thank you profusely for alleviating his fears that he might have had one foot shorter than the other. When he was in Washington, D.C., my son visited him twice, the first and the last time. Dad, my son told me, he loves to drive on one-way streets. in the wrong direction. Gene was appointed to one of the high-ranking positions at the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. My late friend, Dr. Alex Goldstein, was one of only a handful who survived the death factory at Treblinka, where 950,000 were murdered. He graduated from his high school in Warsaw just before the start of World War II. He attended the Johann Wolfgang Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany with me, and graduated from the Chicago Medical School. He did his internship in New Jersey, then he went to serve in the army in Tuli, Greenland, straight from my wedding reception. Upon his return to the States, he bought a practice in Rosicler, a small dead-end community in Illinois. You had to come out the same way you drove in, unless your car could swim to the Ohio River. Eventually, he built a small community hospital there. He learned how to fly an airplane and how to play the piano, both at expert levels. He was appointed to be one of the health commissioners for the state of Illinois by Governor Thompson and served in this capacity for 12 years at an enormous salary of $1 per year. His son, Dr. Stephen Goldstein, earned his PhD in physics from Harvard, and for the last 20 years has worked for the Atomic Energy Department in Los Alamos, New Mexico. His daughter, Dr. Mary Ann Bandit, is a cardiologist for prematurely born babies. Her husband, Dr. David Bandit, professor of medicine at the University of Minnesota, is a world-renowned authority on cardiac electrophysiology and is a medical consultant for the federal administration. Their lovely daughter, Hannah, is a featured dancer at the St. Louis Ballet Company. By the way, they all came to my 90th birthday last Wednesday. And now, my alter ego, my friend of 8 years, Dr. Oscar Klausenstock. The year was 1931. We have just moved into this city, Bielsko-Biała in Poland, and I was on my way to this new school for the first time. On the other side of the road was a youngster about my age, carrying a bunch of books. I started a conversation with him. He was going to the same school as I, the Jewish public school, and surprised, the same grade as I, the 4th grade. He had attended that school from the 1st grade on. The walk to the school was about 40 minutes long. By the end of it, we have become steadfast friends. We promised to share the school bench with each other and to walk home together. We did not know how much fate had decided at this moment to intertwine our lives. We have become almost inseparable in sports, academics, and social life. We shared with each other the intimate details of our home life. My story was simple. My home life was governed by the struggle for economic survival. My father tried to provide for his family the best that he knew how. My mother tried to help him while taking care of her 2 children. Oscar's life was more complex. He lived alone with his mother. His father had left them when Oscar was 6 years old. After his father's departure, Oscar had his mother, her love, her attention, her warm embrace, all to himself. When Oscar was 10, his father remarried, and Oscar went to see him less frequently. At the same time, his mother started to see a gentleman caller. She shared the reason why she felt the need to remarry with her son. She tried to persuade him of all the benefits that he would derive from having a man in the house. Someone to go skiing with, someone to help him with his studies. In 1939, when the war broke out, I was working at the age of 17 in Krakow while Oscar was still living in Bielsko, we had lost track of each other. One day in 1944, while in the concentration camp Leonberg, a transport from another camp arrived. As the prisoners were being counted, we were all herded into one area, standing at attention, heads off. Some people from the transport seemed to be missing, and the checking and counting continued forever. Some distance away, amongst the newcomers, stood a person resembling someone from my past. Haggard, emaciated, his head shaven. He was unlike anyone I had ever known. Yet he still evoked some vague memory. He also kept looking in my direction, a questioning look on his face. Finally came the order, Mützen an, heads on, and we ran into each other's arms. With our heads on, we had recognized each other immediately. It was my dearest childhood friend, Oscar Klagenstock, and now the vagaries of the war had thrown us together again. Come on, let's find my dad, I wept like a little child that has found a long-lost toy. For the next year, in 3 more concentration camps, we managed not to be separated. In 1945, we were moved to what turned out to be the last camp, Ganake, a camp in Bavaria which had the worst accommodations we have encountered. The camp was attached to an airfield to which we marched daily over a distance of several kilometers. As the war was winding down, the conditions for concentration camp inmates deteriorated beyond description. We were placed in underground hovels, sleeping on bunks carved out of the earth and sprinkled with a bit of straw. Cold and dampness never left us. The meager rations never stilled our hunger. Nights were only nightmarish intervals between hellish days of hard labor. On the night of April 23rd, 1945, we went to sleep as usual, hoping to surrender our worn, starved bodies to the escape of slumber, huddling over gown forms close to each other for warmth. Suddenly, shrill whistles and shouts shattered the quiet night. Aufstehen, up, get up, antreten, fall in. The prisoners automatically jumped up from their resting places and with Robert-like movements tried to push their swollen feet into wooden sandals. They fastened the metal dishes to their rumps and ran quickly outside so as not to be found in the bunkers by the couples or the SS and be beaten or shot. I had trouble following the orders. My lacerated legs were hurting me tonight, and I was looking for something with which to wipe the oozing pus. I briefly entertained the notion of not going out, of hiding someplace. Maybe this was the final hour, I told myself. Maybe they were calling out the prisoners to liquidate us before the Allied forces could arrive. Rumors to that effect were circulating in the camp. Certainly, the Germans wanted no witnesses to their atrocities. But in the confusion, I could not find my father or Oscar to share my plans with. We found ourselves on a long march. After 2 days of marching, we were losing inmates at a staggering rate. In the evening of the second day, we were placed in a school building in a small town. As we were pushed into the large assembly hall, we could see by our shrunken numbers how many of the original convoy were missing. Sure, we had noticed the people falling and collapsing. We had heard the shots, but we had no idea that 2/3 of the transport had died on the way. In the middle of the night, we awakened and given a watery gruel of boiled farina. Our numbed bodies lifted themselves from the floor of the hall, and with awkward strides we tried to get our balance. We received the hot liquid and proceeded to slurp it, and then we sank back into stupefied slumber. We awakened at the crack of dawn after what seemed like a wretchedly short rest. We marched out into the cold of the morning and proceeded on the highway toward our still unknown destination. My friend Oscar was running high fever and could hardly drag his feet. My father was concerned about his ability to go on. At one of our stops, he suggested that Oscar should lie down in the roadside ditch where we would cover him with branches and leaves as if he had died, just as we had been doing for others who succumbed on this march of the dead. Oscar agreed, and we left him in the roadside trench, doubting we would ever see him again. I was terribly burdened by the uncertainty of the fate of my best friend. The convoy continued on. On May 1st, 1945, we were liberated by the 7th Army. A week later, we went to the nearest town to look at the bulletin board where people were putting up their names and the names of people they were looking for. The former fellow inmate stopped me to say that he thought that he had seen my friend Oscar Kaltenstock in an American uniform. An American company was stationed in one of the school buildings in town, and I hurried there immediately. I stopped the first soldier I saw, and pointing to my striped uniform, tried to find out if he knew of anyone by the name of Oscar. Yes, he said, gesturing, come with me. And soon I was standing with Oscar, looking fit in his American Army uniform. My friend, whom we had last seen buried in a ditch on the Death March. He told me this story. During the evening after the convoy of prisoners from the Death March had passed, Oscar got up from his concealment and wandered about. Good fortune brought him to a camp of American prisoners of war. The German guards who sensed the imminent end of the war and were trying to ingratiate himself with the Americans led him into the camp, where the medic diagnosed pneumonia and treated Oscar until the camp was liberated by American troops a few days later. When the American POWs went home to the States, Oscar went to work for the company that liberated him. He was still working for that outfit, and after lengthy discussion, I decided to join him. I was introduced to a Captain Nealon, who hailed from Chicago and whose mother was of Polish extraction. He spoke a halting Polish, yet good enough to make me feel comfortable. I was given the coveted American uniform without any insignia, the same as Oscar wore. I joined Oscar working as an interpreter. The captain spoke Polish and English. We spoke Polish and German, and Oscar had learned some English before the war. A few months later, our company moved on and we were entrusted to another outfit, the B Company of the 35th Tank Battalion of the 4th Armored 3rd Army, General Patton's troops. The company commander, Captain John Kingsley, was a teacher in civilian life. And when we shared with him our desire to eventually emigrate to the United States, he insisted that we get some education before we leave. Knowledge is capital that no one can take from you, he said. He engaged a tutor for us and me, Professor Stahovsky, a Russian refugee, to tutor us for college entrance exam. Professor Stahovsky spoke several languages fluently, including Latin, German, and English, and a very good knowledge of the subjects we believed were necessary to get into a German university. Every evening he would spend time with us and me, cramming into us history, literature, algebra, science, and Latin. We swallowed 6 years of Latin in 6 months. Galia Pata Tres Vida Es, that's all I remember. The day soon came when we were told that the company would have to turn in its tanks at the gathering point in Bavaria. Oscar and I, meanwhile, gained admission to Johann Wolfgang Goethe University in Frankfurt. We were sad to see them go. The time had come for us to say goodbye to what we often referred to as our period of physical and mental convalescence. We were parting with that element of America we had come to love so much and hoped someday to become part of. The healing process was over. There was a world out there to face and a life to rebuild. And so, with 8 grades of public school behind us, we started our post-war education at the German university in the fall of 1946. Oscar in medicine, I in philosophy with an eye towards journalism. In 1949, an American colonel who lived in Washington, D.C., sponsored Oscar to come to the United States with the promise of enrolling him in an American medical school. In December of that year, Oscar left for the United States. In the beginning, his letters were upbeat, but that changed with time. The colonel was unable to play Oscar in the University in Washington. At that time, universities exercised numerous clauses and unofficially restricted quota towards Jewish applicants. Oscar hitched a ride to New York, where he tried to get into medical school, again without success. So he traveled to Boston, where despite the many schools there, he was also unlucky. Eventually, when he applied to the Harvard Medical School, the Dean of Medicine, Dr. Churchill, impressed with Oscar's dedication and perseverance, promised to ask Oscar about his garage and remuneration for doing chores around the house if he was accepted to another school. Boston University agreed to accept him if he had the funds for tuition. At the end of his rope, he went to a Jewish organization, the Hillel, and threatened to commit suicide if they would not help him. He graduated Boston University Medical School with honors in 1953. In summer of 1954, I drove to Boston to pick up Oscar up, to go with him to Tanglewood, Massachusetts, to listen to some concerts. Summertime, Tanglewood offered a series of concerts in the park. At that time, Oscar was doing his internship at Massachusetts General Hospital. When I paged him and I heard through the PA system, paging Dr. Oscar Klausenstock, tears ran down my cheeks. We have made it. We were here. Oscar came running, his hair in disarray. Norbert, he cried, I just witnessed a miracle, a true miracle, a baby girl born into this world. We left for Tanglewood, camped in my station wagon, spread a blanket on the lawn in the park, and listened to the Boston pubs. The last piece on the program was Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. When the magnificent and triumphant finale sounded, we toasted life on paper cups with some cheap, inexpensive wine. Oscar, my friend, whom I had buried alive in order to save him from death, loudly exclaimed, "Isn't life wonderful?" Dr. Oscar Klausenstock retired from his practice reluctantly, but he still serves on the medical board of ethics of Marina County in California. My dear friends, at the beginning I shared with you profiles of some of my colleagues and their accomplishments. Those are stories of achievement by orphans of history. Young men and women who, when the war ended and they were liberated, faced the world as bare as they were when they were born. Just a few rags on their backs, no family safety nets, no funds, no direction in which to turn to try to rebuild their lives. All that they had left was their faith in themselves and in mankind, and their quest for knowledge. Against all odds, most of them turned toward the study of medicine. They, the casualties and witnesses of men's most horrible evil inclinations, they decided to become healers and to serve mankind. And so they did. So tell me, should I have any doubts that you will surpass their achievements? You are going into the world armed with its most advanced technology. All its beauty and promise are at your fingertips. You carry more information in your pockets and your smartphones than was available to us in all the libraries of the world. The question is, do you carry with it the confidence and determination that it can be used to benefit the universe? Whether you will decide to research new methods of extracting fossil fuel, or a way to build wells with drinking water for the children of the third world, whether you will be more concerned with leaving to the next generation clean air to breathe and clean water to drink than with bequeathing financial resources to them, is what will determine how history is going to judge you. There is a world out there for you to discover and to conquer. A world whose challenges can bring the best out of you. So start the fire in your belly, wake up your brain, and listen to your heart. We have faith in you, for you are our hopes and the promise of a better world. So go, get going. We are contigo, our young friends. And remember, we will always love you.